The origins of the Gangster Disciples, a notorious gang that would come to shape Chicago's history, can be traced back to the south side of the city. It was the year 1964 when a young boy, barely a teenager, decided to join a small street gang. This boy was Larry the King Hoover, and the gang was the Supreme Gangsters. Little did they know, they were sowing the seeds of a criminal organization that would grow beyond the borders of their neighborhood. Hoover, despite his age, quickly became a prominent figure within the Supreme Gangsters, demonstrating a unique blend of charisma, intelligence, and ruthiness. Their main rivals were the Devil's Disciples, led by David Barksdale, a gang that was as ruthless and ambitious as they were. A fierce and bloody war ensued between the two gangs, turning the south side of Chicago into a battleground. In 1969, however, a monumental shift occurred. Hoover and Barksdale, weary of the relentless violence, agreed to a ceasefire. This truce was more than just an end to the violence. It was the birth of a new entity, the Black Gangster Disciple Nation, or BGDN. This alliance, a fusion of the Supreme Gangsters and the Devil's Disciples, rapidly grew in power and influence. By the early 1970s, the BGDN was not just a participant in the Chicago gang scene, it was the dominant force. This period of dominance, however, was not to last. In 1970, Barksdale was shot, a wound that would eventually claim his life in 1974. His death marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. With Barksdale gone, Larry the King Hoover assumed full control of the Black Gangster Disciples. It was under his leadership that the gang would reach new heights of power, influence, and notoriety. The death of Barksdale in 1974 marked a significant turning point as Hoover assumed full control of the Black Gangster Disciples. From here, the story of the Gangster Disciples takes many twists and turns, but one thing remains consistent. Their impact on the city of Chicago is undeniable and lasting. In the late 1970s, the BGDN began to fracture, setting the stage for the formation of the Gangster Disciples as we know them today. The alliance that once stood strong began to crumble into three distinct factions: the Black Gangsters, the Black Disciples, and the Gangster Disciples. At the heart of it all, Larry the King Hoover, who had assumed full control of the Black Gangster Disciples after the death of David Barksdale, found himself in the midst of a potential split. Hoover, however, was not one to let a situation spiral out of control. Despite being incarcerated on murder charges, he acted swiftly to preserve the unity of the gang. In an unprecedented move, he set up an alliance of all street and prison gangs that served his interests, unifying them into a single family. This alliance was a melting pot of various gangs, including the Gangster Disciples, Black Disciples, Satan Disciples, Latin Disciples, Spanish Gangster Disciples, and several others. Hoover's strategy not only prevented a complete split, but also reinforced the power and influence of the Gangster Disciples. The Gangster Disciples didn't just limit their operations to the south side of Chicago. They expanded, spreading their influence beyond their home turf to over 100 cities and 31 states, predominantly in the Midwestern and Southeastern United States. They also left their mark in the US prison system, maintaining a significant presence. From the north and west sides of Chicago to Indianapolis, Minneapolis, Kansas City, Detroit, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Birmingham, and even Jackson, Hoover's birthplace, the Gangster Disciples made their presence known. They emerged in significant numbers in Memphis, Tennessee in the 1980s, becoming the first modern street gang to do so. With an estimated membership of 50,000 to 90,000, the Gangster Disciples had become a formidable force in the criminal underworld. Their expansion marked a new era of organized crime, one that would leave a lasting impact on the cities they infiltrated, forever changing the landscape of gang warfare. Despite being imprisoned on murder charges, Hoover continued to exert influence over the Gangster Disciples. His leadership was so profound that his directives from behind bars resonated across the gang's operations. But Hoover's reign wasn't invincible. In fact, his downfall began in 1995, marking a significant shift in the contours of gangland Chicago. In a remarkable feat of law enforcement, a 17-year investigation led to Hoover's arrest. This was no ordinary investigation. It was a joint undertaking by the Illinois Department of Corrections, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The charges were as severe as they were varied, spanning from conspiracy and extortion to money laundering. It was determined through wiretaps that Hoover, despite his incarceration, was still operating illicit activities within the Gangster Disciples. The trial that followed was a significant event in the history of the Gangster Disciples. Hoover faced the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois in 1997. The verdict was stark. Hoover was found guilty on all charges. The ramifications of this outcome were severe for Hoover. He was sentenced to 3 additional life terms in federal prison, a testament to the extent of his criminal activities. Hoover's current residence is the ADX Florence in Fremont County, Colorado. A far cry from the streets of Chicago, but a fitting place for a man of his notoriety. Despite the enormous physical distance and the prison walls between him and his gang, Hoover's influence was not fully extinguished. The Gangster Disciples continued to operate under his directives, proving the depth of his control over the organization. Hoover's influence within the Gangster Disciples was so strong that even from prison, he continued to control the gang. This is a testament to Hoover's charisma, strategic acumen, and the loyalty he commanded. But it also underscores the enduring challenges faced by authorities in their battle against organized crime. When a leader's influence is so strong that it transcends prison walls, it's a stark reminder of the complex and relentless nature of these criminal networks. Fast forward to the present day, and the Gangster Disciples continue to be a significant player in the criminal underworld. Despite repeated attempts to dismantle the gang, they've proven to be an enduring entity, spreading their influence far and wide. One of the most notable events in recent years was the 2016 arrest of 32 Gangster Disciples members. Under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, often referred to as RICO, federal agents were able to apprehend these individuals. Among those arrested was a former police officer whose alleged involvement paints a chilling picture of the gang's reach. This wasn't just a group of unruly teens, it was a structured, organized criminal enterprise. The charges brought against these members were far from minor. The indictment alleges that Gangster Disciples members were involved in 10 murders, 12 attempted murders, and 2 robberies. There was also the extortion of rap artists, forcing them to affiliate themselves with the Gangster Disciples. But the criminal activities didn't stop there. Drug trafficking was another major part of the Gangster Disciples' operations. They dealt in significant quantities of heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, illegal prescription drugs, and marijuana. The indictment also sought the forfeiture of 34 different firearms seized as part of the investigation. This paints a grim picture of a gang that was not only dealing in drugs, but was also heavily armed. These charges and subsequent arrests were a major blow to the Gangster Disciples. However, it's clear that the gang's influence has not been entirely eradicated. They remain active in over 100 cities and 31 states, predominantly in the Midwestern and Southeastern United States. Their presence is also felt strongly in the US prison system. Despite the efforts of law enforcement, the Gangster Disciples continue to be a pervasive force in the criminal landscape. Their story serves as a stark reminder of the power and reach of organized crime and the ongoing battle to dismantle such entities. The Gangster Disciples have left an indelible mark on Chicago and other cities across the United States. This notorious gang's legacy is steeped in violence, crime, and a complex power structure that has shaped and scarred communities for decades. Their influence has extended far beyond the south side of Chicago, where their story began. The Gangster Disciples have had a significant presence in over 100 cities and 31 states, predominantly in the Midwestern and Southeastern United States. This expansion, however, has not come without a high cost. The Gangster Disciples have been linked to a staggering range of criminal activities, from murder and attempted murder to robbery, extortion, and large-scale drug trafficking. The indictment of 32 members in 2016, which included a former police officer turned hitman, laid bare the chilling extent of the gang's operations. This wide-reaching criminal enterprise has resulted in untold damage to countless lives and communities. The gang's activities have also had a significant economic impact. Their fraudulent activities alone have resulted in losses of over $450,000. This doesn't even begin to account for the broader societal costs associated with crime, violence, and drug addiction. But amidst the grim legacy, there are glimmers of change. Larry the King Hoover, the man who once led the Black Gangster Disciples, claimed in July 2022 that he had renounced his gang ties. After decades of overseeing a vast criminal empire, this shift indicates a possible turning point, though its true impact remains to be seen. The story of the Gangster Disciples is a stark reminder of the devastating impact that organized crime can have on our communities. Their legacy is a wake-up call, urging us to address the root causes of gang violence and work towards safer, healthier societies. As we look to the future, it's our responsibility to ensure that this chapter of history is not repeated.